Welcome back to Kaz Outdoors, everyone. In this video I thought I'd give my top tips for walking the South Downs Way. Now it appears that hopefully everything will be opening up later this year and we can get into the outdoors again. I know lots of us are desperate to get out there, and doing a national trail is a really popular thing to do. I did the South Downs Way in 2020 when we were kind of in between the lockdowns. The South Downs Way is a 100-mile trail, really across the ridges of the South Downs. It's absolutely beautiful scenery and I'd highly recommend it. So really what this video is about, it is not an in-depth guide to how to walk the South Downs Way. What it is just the few things that if I was to do the walk again, I would have at the forefront of my mind. So I'm going to give you my top tips which are specific to the South Downs Way. I've got other tips which are general for national trails, but the ones I'm going to give you today pretty much are specific to this trail. So if you have any questions at all about walking the route, please put them in the comments below and I promise I'll answer all your questions. It's difficult for me to imagine all the questions you might have, but just ask me and I promise I'll answer. So the South Downs Way is a 100-mile trail which runs from Winchester to Eastbourne, or Eastbourne to Winchester, whatever your choice is. And that brings me to my very first tip, which would be to tackle the trail from west to east. In that way, you generally will have the prevailing winds behind you rather than blowing in your face. And I tell you what, it does get quite windy up there. So do the trail Winchester to Eastbourne is my advice. Another reason for walking from west to east is that you're starting off the trail in, let's say, the slightly easier parts of it, and by the time you get over to the hills and the cliffs towards Beachy Head and Eastbourne, then hopefully you'll have built up some stamina, some fitness. And just a quick mention here of the difficulty of the walk. Although it's described as one of the UK's easier trails, then don't underestimate the amount of ups and downs. There is lots of ridge walking, but there's also lots of uphill and downhill as you go. So let's talk about navigation on the trail. It's very well signposted and you follow the acorn as you do on the UK national trails. I took the Trailblazer guide with me and this adventure series to the South Downs Way. I'm a big fan of Trailblazer, but to be honest, on this route I hardly used it and wished I hadn't taken it just for the extra weight I was carrying. So I hardly ever referred to a map or even to the app on my phone. It was easy to follow the route. But I did use this for my next tip. So my next tip is to think carefully about where you're going to get your water on the trail. If you did watch my video of the South Downs Way, you will see that I did run out of water on one day and it made it an uncomfortable day. So there are water taps along the route and obviously pubs and things. I will put a link to a document that gives you the location of all those water taps. I didn't find them particularly easy to find, but I think, having spoken to people, that could have been because of the time I walked the route, which was after a long lockdown and a lot of the vegetation had grown up quite a lot, and I think some of the taps were actually semi-concealed. So I didn't do this before I left home, but I did sort of after a few days. One evening I sat and I just marked on here where the location of all the taps so that I knew when they were coming up and I was less likely to miss them. The pubs, of course, are great places where they generally will let you fill up your water, but they were closed when I did the walk. So when you do come to a tap, my recommendation would be that you fill up your water bottle and you down all that in one go, and then fill up your water bottles and everything you've got again before setting off, so you're always well hydrated on the route. Don't forget there aren't any real water courses where you might be able to use a filter or anything like that. You are dependent on cafes, pubs and the water taps. Another thing I'd strongly suggest is that you don't wear headphones during the day. The trail is really popular and you'll find if you are listening to an audiobook or music or something, you'll spend your whole time sort of in a semi-tense state waiting for people to come up behind you, which they will all the time. You've got horse riders, lots and lots of cyclists and runners. It's better to just save your headphones for the evening and relaxing in your tent or your accommodation for a bit of a chill out. Obviously there's lots of different accommodation types along the route, from pubs and B&Bs and campsites. They're not often directly on the route. You do have to walk a little way off and back on again. Just want to have a word about wild camping here. People do wild camp the trail quite successfully. If this is what you're wanting to do, then I would think carefully about the time of year that you're going to do the trail, because it is so busy, then you will end up kind of hanging around for ages at night waiting for everybody to go home before you can pitch your tent and be discreet. So you might want to think about the shoulder months, sort of early spring and autumn, if you are thinking of wild camping. I also found there weren't that many suitable spots for wild camping. Generally you tend to be just off the trail, tucked behind a tree or something like that, so it's not the most scenic location and it's not the most private location. But it is possible, and certain bits are better than others. But generally it's not the best wild camping trail I've come across. I guess it'd be so much easier with a bivvy and a tarp or something, but I find if I'm using anything like that, I get quite tired, because it's okay for a couple of nights, but if you're going to do it for say 7, 8, 9 days of the South Downs Way, then having the elements on your face all the time always interrupts my sleep. So have a think. But the way I did it was I did 3 wild camps, I think. I did a B&B, I did a fantastic youth hostel, South East Youth Hostel, and I also stayed in a kind of wooden hut as well. That worked really well for me, but I have to say that whenever I am doing a long trail, I won't wild camp the whole way, because I like to do videos. I do like to have my gadgets with me and charged up. Then I always book into some accommodation where I can recharge all my tech sort of halfway through the trip, or after maybe 4 days, something like that. I do find on trails, it didn't happen on the South Downs Way because lots of these places were closed because it was just after the lockdown, but you can charge up your gadgets in coffee shops and tea shops. They'll be quite happy for you to do that. I always ask. But of course, something like a power bank does take quite a long time to charge, and you might not want to waste all that time of the day sitting there waiting for your gadgets to charge. So just one quick tip here on food. There are pubs along the way and tea rooms and the occasional convenience store, but they're not really directly on the route, and a lot of the villages are really small and don't have many facilities. But what I would say is, if you have a pub in mind or a tea room that you want to go to, do make sure you phone them and find out their opening hours, so that you don't spend the whole morning dreaming of that fantastic pub lunch and then turn up to find that they're just closing. Some accommodation will provide you with a packed lunch for the next day if you would like that. And also at the youth hostel in South East, which I stayed at and really enjoyed, if you phone ahead or email ahead, you can order a pizza, and that pizza was amazing. But you can't just walk in and expect the food to be there. So just check, all the time check that what you think you're going to get when you get places, whether it's a water tap, whether it's food, whether it's a pub open, make sure that you know the times, and make sure you've got all the information you need so that the food is there when you want it. Another tip I have for you concerns foot care and your feet. The South Downs Way is chalky and flinty, and it can be quite hard going on your feet. So I'd suggest that in the few weeks before you leave to do the trail, that you take care of your feet. You massage cream in, and you make sure your toenails are all short, and just some general foot care. And then I'll show you a snippet here from a video on a tape I used that I put over the pads of my feet. I would highly suggest that when you walk, you prepare this area of your foot with some kind of protection, and then also wear thick socks on top. You can see the snippet of the video here, but if you want to watch the full video on how I would prepare my feet to try and prevent blisters and chafing and sore spots, then I'll link that in the description below.
Now, if you already know that you are prone to blisters on certain parts of your foot, say your heel or on the tip of your toe or something, then you can plan to put extra protection there before going out. Obviously there's things like Band-Aid and blister plasters that you can use, but what I use is I use this Kinesiology Tape. This is really a strapping and support tape, but I find it works really well in protecting any areas that normally might develop into blisters for me. I have got a blister on this toe here. I won't show you, I'm sure you don't want to see that. And that was because I ignored my own advice. I went on a long hike of around 20 miles and I felt a hot spot starting to form on my second toe here. And of course what you should do is stop immediately and treat the area, but I didn't and I carried on. So I have got a blister on the top of that. So what I do is I take some of this with me normally. I will cut it into different lengths. So just cut some off. And the company recommend that you round the corners of this, and they suggest that will help with the adhesion. So I just take different sizes, some that might fit my heels, some that will fit underneath here on the pad of my foot if I need it, and some that will fit my toes, and I just take them with me in my running pack. So just a rough kind of shape like that, and then if you just rub it in your fingers like that just to warm up the adhesive a little, and then you just peel off the backing, and I'll show you how I pop it on. All I do is really just pop it over the top, so you can see what I'm doing. If I put that leg there, pop it over the top of the toe and just squash it in at the side. And it's better if you don't overlap the tape. It would adhere and stay on a lot longer if you don't do that. So I will prepare certain areas. Sometimes I'll put one along here if I'm going on a long hike, that is, because I do tend to find that's a hot spot definitely for me. But this toe at the moment, if I was going out for a run now, I would put this tape on.
So I hope you found some of these tips useful. I mean, I could go on forever with tips, but I just wanted to keep it quite concise. And then I thought that if you did have specific questions, you could ask me in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you next time, and happy planning for your upcoming trips.